Oh, hi, Mark.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Hey, Stella!
You got him, Jack! I love you! Have fun storming the castle.
When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Tell them we'll have punch and pack. We're not gonna have punch and pie. My bill will come if they think we have punch and pack.
Hello and welcome to Frame to Frame, part of Punch and Pie Media. We are the podcast that take two seemingly unconnected films and slam them together, like going on holiday by mistake and making sure your blood alcohol level stays just the right levels. I'm Andy Williams.
And I'm Sean Wilson.
And this week we're talking about alcohol as truth serum. So we're looking at two films that put alcohol very much at the forefront. Sean, this is normally where I ask you a completely random question about your
blood alcohol levels
to either of the films, but yeah,
might as well.
I'm not going to go into that one. That is between
no one wants
you
to see
and
that.
those around you. But you know, when it comes to the depictions of alcohol in both of these films, I think that it's not celebrated, but it's also not completely vilified. Do you see that as being a thing that happens quite often in films? It's either overtly celebrated as let's be honest, it's a drug. It's either celebrated or utterly condemned. Yeah,
it's usually binary, isn't it? If you think of something like Billy Wilder's The Lost Weekend with Ray Milland, which was a 1945 film in which was really, really ironically clear-eyed about the pernicious effects of alcoholism. If you contrast that with something like, you can contrast that with the films we're going to talk about today, or, for example, something like Edgar Wright's The World's End, in which, it does make the case for alcohol being like a bonding agent, but also a destructive thing, and also something that can protect you against a group of invasive homicidal aliens as well, because that's one of the running gags of The World's End. But yeah, I think it is always interesting when alcoholism is portrayed in a relatively positive way, because I think there is a lot of stigma involved to it. I think maybe, the relationship to alcohol in both of these movies that we're talking about today is probably relatively nuanced and complicated. I think one is broadly comic, the other is broadly melancholic, I would say. Wouldn't you agree?
We'll get into that as we come to the film.
I thought we were going to address our own alcoholic history. Were we not?
Our own alcoholic history?
Yeah.
I very much like a whiskey, but I try not to overindulge.
We were at a whiskey distillery just recently in Edinburgh.
We were indeed.
Yeah.
We were indeed.
Excellent.
That was lovely. And what was especially lovely was the certain people that didn't drink whiskey, so ended up passing their whiskeys around for the rest of us to share.
So singles became doubles for certain people. Yeah.
Isn't that the way a good night both starts and ends?
Yeah, exactly. And very often you don't know it's ended until the following morning. So hang on a minute. Or
you wake up to the picture of you sleeping on the sofa.
Yeah. After you plied me with some rum shot 6 years ago that we always joke in social circles. It made me stop talking. It completely shut down my powers of speech, and I woke up in your house.
It was the only time that I've known you to not speak.
If you want me to stop speaking on this podcast, maybe we ought to employ that.
We've just got a mute button. That's all we need for this.
Yeah, it works just as well as rum. Yeah, so I like you like whiskey. I like Belgian and German beer. I'm very, very partial to that. So that is quite lethal when taken in high doses.
Yeah, they can be quite high percentages, can't they?
Yes, and quite gassy as well. So
that's it. Beer, I stick to Guinness. I'd very happily drink Guinness all day, every day. Guinness Zero is wonderful for that, because you can drink it all day, every day, and it's not alcoholic, and it tastes pretty good.
Yeah.
Please sponsor us.
Yeah, other drinks are available. So yeah. I've never been a Guinness person personally, but each day.
You need to have one in Ireland. That's how
I did it there. I went to the Guinness factory. I had one there because I felt like I had to.
You have to. But, when in Rome.
Yeah.
But speaking of drinking strange things, why don't we jump straight back to Bruce Robinson's 1987 film, which sees Richard E. Grant downing a bottle of lighter fluid within the first 5 minutes of the movie with Withnail and I.
Yeah. So, absolute cult classic British film from 1987. So, my birth year. We've often talked on this podcast, what are the best films from the year of your birth? This would always certainly be one of mine. I mean, this is like the archetypal, quotable British student film. I mean, maybe you can throw some of the Python films in there as well.
Well, we can thank George Harrison for all of them then.
Exactly, yeah, handmade films. Yeah, we have got George Harrison to thank a lot for, not just in terms of music, but in terms of films. I think that often gets overlooked. So yeah, written and directed by Bruce Robinson after Robinson had written The Killing Fields for Roland Joffe back in 1984, which is a very powerful film. This strikes a completely different métier. This is a very, very melancholic, down at heel black comedy. Drawn from Bruce Robinson's own experiences. There is a biographical element to this as well, but it's an original script. So star-making role for Richard E. Grant as Withnail, and then I is played by Paul McGann. He's named as Marwood in the published screenplay, goes unnamed in the credits. So two, as I said, very, very down at hill flatmates. Film starts in September 1969 in London. They're in this, if you can think of the worst possible living quarters for anybody to live in ever, these guys have found probably something even worse than that. I
don't know. I think my first student union flat, that was something. I was the tidy one. That gives you an indication as to what that flat was like.
So you were the one basically under pressure to kind of keep it all in line, were you really?
I left it within 3 months.
Yeah, you were the I/Marwood of the, the group
with less glasses, but the same steely blue eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Well, in our first student house, the day before we were due to get our damage deposit back, we did have a big drunken party and managed to bash a big hole in the ceiling. And we then covered it up with a bit of cardboard and painted it the same color as the ceiling. So, and we got away with it. We got our damage deposit back. So yeah, it worked. Yeah. So yeah. Not quite as extravagant as anything Withnail and I, though. It wasn't quite as squalid as that. So as I say, so basically what you have here are so Withnail are two unemployed young actors. So Richard E. Grant is the aspiring thesp, the utterly flamboyant one, but they're both dissolute and like reprobates. So I/Marwood, depending on what you want to refer to him as, is the one who may or may not have omens of a potential career brewing in the background. So we were introduced to them at the beginning. Withnail has covered his body in, I forget what he's covered his body in, like grease paint or something to
it was deep heat.
Deep heat, that's it, yeah, deep heat, yeah, to keep himself warm. There's no getting around the fact that the sink is basically piled up with about 2 to 3 years worth of refuse and stuff, and there's things living in it. And then immediately all the great quotes start to come out, like my heart is beating like a fucked clock, like fork it, I demand to have some booze, because their careers have completely washed up. So what do? They decide to travel to the Lake District to stay in Withnail's uncle's house in the Lake District, Uncle Monty, played by the late great Richard Griffiths, which yields the classic fish out of water scenario where they rub the locals up the wrong way. They have to kill a chicken and eat it for dinner. They get chased by a bull. Local trapper threatens them with a dead fish. And basically things just effectively get worse and worse and worse. As I said, they go on holiday by mistake, and then Uncle Monty himself turns up and then has designs on Marwood, Paul McGann, and things take a turn for the comically sinister. As I said, it's like, I mean, you think of how many classic scenes I've just rattled through there in that plot synopsis. Pretty much every single one of those scenes is like a miniature comic masterpiece that adds up to this whole. It is funny coming to it again because it is seen as just the archetypal grubby student movie that everyone watches when they're prepared to go out and get blitzed, or when they're watching the morning after with a really bad hangover. It is, having watched it again, it's a lot more melancholic and it's a lot darker than I remember it being. And I think what it does, like so many British comedies do, is a lot of pathos in it, which you might not necessarily get from American comedies of this period. It is very much tapped into the sadness of its central characters, particularly Withnail, who he is this basic like Shakespearean character, wandering around, extravagant. As I said, it's still really a career-defining role for Richard E. Grant. I mean, a lot of Richard E. Grant's oeuvre seems to go back to this, to the register of this performance. It's tragic, it's flamboyant, it's over the top. It's kind of, the character is gloriously lacking in self-awareness, which is where a lot of the humor comes from. But it is also very sad, and obviously we can cycle back to, we can get to the end of the film, which basically underlines the sadness of it. As I said, Bruce Robinson basically drew on his own experiences living in a flat with Vivian McKerrell, who was a 1960s, 70s British actor. And apparently Uncle Monty was based on the director Franco Zeffirelli, who gave Robinson unwanted attentions when he was a young actor.
Allegedly,
yeah. I think it's probably safe to say that I love this film, and now I'd love to know what you make of it.
Well, so I remember watching this. I bought the DVD in a charity shop a long while ago, and I watched it then. And then I haven't seen it since, so I watched it again for this episode. And if I'm being completely honest, I know that it's it's heralded as a great cult film. I love a great cult film, but I don't feel that I get it. I don't really. I have no interest in returning to it in any time soon. I find, frankly, the characters exhausting. I find the selfishness and the arrogance of Withnail to be quite off-putting. He treats everyone around him like crap. He has one friend in the world and he's manipulating him the entire time. And he's very clearly come from money and he's pretending to slum it. He doesn't need to do that. And then when you add in Paul McGann, Marwood, whatever we're calling him, he seems to just be a ball of pure anxiety the whole time. And I'm sure that the point is that the director would say that they're supposed to be unlikable, and I get that, but I just feel that this movie is heralded by some great people who I respect, you being one of them, and I just don't feel that I get it. I feel like I've missed something.
I think one of the things I probably should have pointed out is, well, I did say that it's set in 1969, and I think that historical context is key here. So this is an 80s British film looking back at basically the dog end of the 1960s. We spoke about the swinging 60s in the previous episode, like in one of the previous episodes, like Alfie and Last Night in Soho. This movie takes place at the end of that decade, where pretty much, I mean, not only in this country, but in America, everything had gone wrong as well. Flower power had completely imploded. You had the Manson murders. Everything had kind of festered, I think. And I think one of the melancholic principles of this movie is showing that these two characters, or Withnail actually, is in the wrong place at the wrong time. He hasn't found his métier, whereas I do agree that Withnail is very overbearing, and I think he would be more overbearing were it not for the fact that Marlowe is marginally more bearable, and I think that Marlowe does actually have the gumption at the end to follow his dream. He gets an opportunity to be an actor and he leaves Withnail. I think that mitigates it. I think that's the structure of the movie. If there were two Withnails, it would be unwatchable, absolutely unwatchable. And they'd end up cancelling each other out as well. I think the presence of Paul McGann is very important, but I also think it's just important to look at what Bruce Robinson is basically saying from his position in the 1980s about where people found themselves at the end of the 1960s in this very, very decadent, dissolute, dissipated, alcoholic scenario. And I think he plays it for both laughs and poignancy, I think.
Well, I mean, we'll come to what I think about Another Round when we get there, but I feel that this is more of an acquired taste. I think that Withnail is one of the films like a Belgian beer, like a black coffee. You need time to climatize to it, and you need probably watches, and you need some form of a level of experience with its subject matter, whether that be through osmosis and through culturally, or whether that be actual lived in experience. I just found it hard to get away in, and it took me 2 runs of the movie to watch this time around, especially then when we got to the predatory nature of Uncle Monty. Like, that felt dated. It felt
it's kind there is definitely an air of homosexual panic about it, but again, I think a lot of that is because of when it's set, like when the story is set in the 1960s. I know it doesn't entirely get it off the hook, but I do think it contextualizes it. And again, Uncle Monty is the wrong he's in the wrong place, he's the wrong age in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think there is a tragedy to that, a grotesque tragedy, but I think there is a tragedy to it up to a point.
I get what you're saying. I just think that it was played more in the wake of like a British farce, like the aggressive, predatory, closeted homosexual trope. Whereas I think that hasn't aged well. I think that what Richard Griffiths does actually manages to save it from being a cheap caricature. I think because he was such a great actor, he's got an air of tragedy about his, like you said, about the fact that he's closeted in the way that he is, and he's out of that time. But that was one of the elements of the film that went, okay, that's really not aged well. In effect, when you've got Paul McGann's character running away scared, that it just felt a little bit unnecessary.
And the fact that Withnail has basically manipulated that situation, again, there is that darkness in it, which I think is almost certainly the catalyst for Marwood walking away at the end, like, yes, maturing and realizing, okay, this dynamic is really not going to work anymore. And then, of course,
it's a toxic relationship.
Exactly, it is. It's a toxic, very toxic male relationship. My best frenemy kind of thing, really. And they're both.
If only they'd started a podcast together.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have drunk often together, so maybe we are Withnail and I. In fact, you're having a snifter right now. I can see you on the camera. So
I was keeping that quiet.
Yeah. Oh no, I wasn't. What were we saying about a toxic dynamic? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'm disobeying one of the rules of Another Round in that it's after 8 o'clock when we record. But it felt just right to have just a tiny tipple of
little tipple,
discussing these films.
But yeah, it is interesting to liken this particular film to drinking. You said it was like a fine coffee or a Belgian beer. I'd say this film is probably like, I don't know, like a port or something. There's deep, complex flavors in it, and whether it goes down easily or not, I'm not sure. And I should say, when I went to the Porto a few years ago, I discovered white port and lemonade, and that's absolutely. This isn't a white port and lemonade film. This is like a tawny port or
lighter fluid.
Yeah, your lighter fluid. Yeah. Well, I suppose we should explain that.
Quadruple X in a bag.
Yeah. Not even the wankers on the site drink meths. But yeah, so the famous scene at the beginning where Richard E. Grant sort of downs the lighter fluid because he doesn't have any booze. Bruce Robinson had actually put vinegar in the lighter.
Water in the takes, wasn't
it? Yeah. They thought Richard E. Grant thought there was water in it. Bruce Robinson had swapped it out with vinegar. So Richard E. Grant's reaction is real. So and these kind of things are like passed into like movie lore. I think whatever one thinks of the movie, it takes a particular kind of film to for that kind of trivia to resonate and get out there with an audience. I think that's a testament to the film's reputation. I think irrespective of what one thinks of it subjectively, I think.
Well, this is it. So, like, I'm not coming out and kicking the film. I'm not coming out and saying it's not funny. I'm not coming out and saying that it's not very good. What I'm saying is I didn't get it. I think it's a me problem.
It is an acquired taste. I didn't get it straight away. I had to watch it several times. I think the first time I did watch it, I was at university and I wasn't sure at first.
There's some great performances. Like
they were all great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's revered.
And Richard Griffiths, even like I said, even when you go down into the sort of the below the line, when you've got the hairdresser who's played by Ralph Brown, and you've got even people in the below the line, you've got Presuming Ed, who squats in their flat when they're away. Like all of the incidental characters, there's some really, really good performances. I just think on a script level, I struggled.
What is it that Ralph Brown says is the call your boots, man. This doll has voodoo properties. It's like, and is your hair are your aerials. That's why bald men are in the employ of the government, and it's just classic like non sequiturs like that. And I think what it shows what British films do very well is that British films aren't afraid to be incidental. It's really got nothing to do with the plot, but the film will just stop and just observe a particular character for a while and soak them up, and then it will move on. I do like classic British comedies, like the ability to do that. It's not just about the mechanics of the plot; it's about soaking up the individual idiosyncrasies of what's going on. It's interesting that you mentioned like the slightly dated air of gay panic around Uncle Monty. The bit at the beginning when they're in the pub before they even go to the Lake District.
Is this when he calls the guy McFuck?
Yeah, who are you, McFuck? He's a Ponce. Now I'm calling you one Ponce. Like yeah, perfume Ponce, and it's kind of like that's kind of a thing. I think that very much plays into a kind of queer anxiety about the period in which it's set. And I'm not quite.
You got to think it was out in '87, right? We weren't past that.
Yeah.
It was coming out in the midst of the AIDS crisis, in the midst of there was another kind of gay panic in the late '80s. So
yes, yeah.
It may not be completely innocent on the film's part. I'm not saying that it's terribly handled. I'm just saying it's something that looks dated.
Yeah. I think there are brilliant bits as well. I mean, Michael Elphick as Jake the Poacher. I mentioned him earlier. He's like, I've been watching you, especially you prancing like a tit. You want working on, boy. Don't threaten me with a dead fish like that. Like it's just and there's brilliant. I don't know whether they're like accidents, but that scene just before they meet Jake when they're in the Lake District at that point and they're in the pub. If you watch very closely, the bartender. It's almost like an open all hours thing. You notice the bartender gets knocked in the stomach by the cash register that comes flying out, and Richard Lee Grant and Paul McGann almost break, and they just about hold it together. And I think I love the fact that those kind of presumably accidents were allowed to stay in the film because they give it that richness.
Or it was just low budget enough that they went, right, we've got it. We can't
afford another take. We don't move on. Yeah. I mean, likewise, the scene when they're in the tea rooms. We're gonna install a jukebox and liven all you stiffs up a bit. Like apparently they weren't supposed to laugh during that scene, but they couldn't get through the lines. So and that's ironically that's what makes the scene as memorable as it is. It is an acquired taste. I do agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I get the feeling watching it that it is a me problem, right? I'm not saying that it's the film's problem. I do think that it's very much one of those things of the more that you put into it, it could very well be the Anchorman of its day, right? But how Anchorman would play to somebody now, 20 years later, is very different to how it played back then. Same thing.
Well, you're talking about a generational thing there, aren't you? About how generational tastes wax and wane over time. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm, like I said, I said it at the top, I'm not in a rush to return. That's not to say I never will. So maybe one day I'll acquire that taste. I just don't feel that I couldn't come on here and lie, right? I'm not going to come on here and just claim it as the cult classic that it is and say that I laughed from beginning to end. Because number one, I didn't. Number two, there's too much melancholy in the film for that.
Well, yeah.
Probably to the film's credit. But it is, I think, by design, a difficult watch. Whilst you've got these quotable scenes, I think that it is designed to be difficult. And I don't think me finding it difficult is a bad thing, but it's also not dismissing.
Well, you can't deny that it is insanely quotable. I mean, it is one of the most quotable British films of all time. It's one of the most quotable films of that decade, and there is, Bruce Robinson takes great relish in that. A coward you are, Withnail, an expert on bulls you are not. Things like that. And get in the back of the van, little things, little bits like that. But then you mentioned the sadness there. I mean, we have to address the way the film ends, which is what I think caps it off as, personally, I think it caps it off as a great film when Withnail is basically left alone at London in Regent's Park, and he quotes Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2 of Hamlet, the soliloquy, "What a piece of work is man." And it is very sad. And Marwood has left to ostensibly begin his acting career. And I think that's it. I think Withnail is just emblematic of an era, a 1960s era that was lost. For all the japery, that's it.
Well, and then I grew up and became Doctor Who. So
I do remember that Doctor Who with Eric Roberts as the Master. Yeah, it's interesting bit of casting. Yeah.
I mean, if there's anyone that could play evil himself, I think Eric Roberts would turn it up to 11 at least.
Well, yeah, he was in Blackbird, and actually, you and I watched that while very drunk, and we could, even while we were drunk, we could discern how terrible that was. So
I think that was less drunk and more trying to cope with the environment that we put ourselves in.
Watching Blackbird,
god awful movie, yeah.
Michael Flatley, yeah.
But with it being a cult film, Withnail and I did actually make money at the box office, which it was budgeted at £1.1 million. It took $2 million, so it
washed its face.
It about made its budget, yeah, about that. But it is one of the films that video stores really benefited from, and repeat viewings, and it's now one of the films that very often goes back to places like the Prince Charles Cinema in London, and it draws a crowd all the time. I think the Electric in Birmingham managed to save the cinema or eventually relocate to a different location because of the strength of keeping on showing Withnail and I, to the extent that Richard E. Grant and Bruce Robinson actually showed up at one of the screenings. So it draws a crowd, right? It brings people in, and it is probably one of the biggest cult films. I just think, truthfully, I'm not in that cult. I might be at some point, but I'm just not in it.
I mean, Richard E. Grant has effectively built a career off playing eccentric, rakish individuals off this. It's a remarkable debut performance, and bearing in mind he's not an alcoholic either. He can't drink alcohol, otherwise he gets ill.
Yeah.
And Bruce Robinson made him get drunk in preparation for the film. I mean, it's some of the best drunk acting I've ever seen, and set Richard E. Grant's career skyrocketing off. Some 40 odd years later, Richard E. Grant is still top of the tree for these kind of characters. You've got to credit this film.
I think it was Spice World that did that for him.
Oh, you had to remind me that he was in Spice World, didn't you? Yeah, you had to bring it crashing down. Yeah. He was very good in Can You Ever Forgive Me with Melissa McCarthy. He was superb in that. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, he was good in Saltburn as well, but
he was.
The less said about that film,
the better. Well, I think the bathtub stole that one, but yeah.
Or the grave.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we're going to be chatting about the 2020 Danish movie by Thomas Vinterberg, Another Round. And we're back. John, I had never seen Another Round before.
Really?
I wanted to see it, but when it came out, I think everyone was in the midst of their own putting their blood alcohol level at a certain level, because it was just pre-COVID, as far as I remember. It was one of the films that was around about that point. So I never actually got around to it until watching it for this podcast. So Another Round is an Oscar winner. It's a Danish comedy drama starring Mads Mikkelsen as Martin, who is a high school history teacher trapped in his midlife rut. He's disconnected from his wife and ignored by his children, and boring all of his students to the extent that they're actually calling meetings to tell him that they're worried about their own grades as a result of his bad teaching. Martin and three fellow teacher friends decide to test an obscure psychological theory. The idea that humans are born with a blood alcohol deficit, and that maintaining a 0.05 blood alcohol level, 0.05% blood alcohol level, opens the mind and boosts creativity and destroys anxiety and basically makes everything perfect. For context, 0.05% is the drinking. It's what you can drink and drive in Denmark. In Europe, the highest of those ratings is 0.08, which is the UK and Ireland. So we are the highest of the continent. A lot of places have it as just flat out 0%. You could, if you have any drinks, then you can't drive at all.
So I don't know if that makes us lucky or unlucky over here, or just plain foolhardy.
Foolhardy would be my way.
Yeah,
I have pretty much a 0% rule to the whole thing, but that is what it is. They also set their own rules. They only drink within work hours, and there's no drinking after 8 p.m. Initially, it's a massive success. The history classes become legendary. His marriage reignites. Everyone is emboldened by the buzz that they're getting. So the group pushes things just a smidge further, and then a smidge further, and then they chase the maximum intoxication, which is 0.1, basically, or 0.12. And their lives begin to unravel in various ways. You've got one of his teacher friends being wetting the bed, using the same terminology that his son is using whilst asleep. You've got another one who finds it very, very difficult to come back down after this experiment, who he was already quietly battling this, and he spirals down, and unfortunately that ends in sad circumstances. And then I want to discuss the ending with you on a separate point, because there's an element of bittersweet, there's an element of sadness to the whole ending, but we'll get to that. I thought that this film was brilliant. You know, it was made by Thomas Vinterberg, who is probably best known as being one of the key founders of the Dogme 95 movement, along with Lars von Trier. And, you know, he's obviously made things like Festen in the past, per the Dogme Manifesto. But he's also made some great films as well. He did Far From the Madding Crowd, which is very, very different to both of those movies.
He also directed Mads Mikkelsen in The Hunt, which is devastating.
I was coming to that.
Yeah. We can finish each other's sentences by now, but yeah.
Sandwiches. That was the second collaboration with Tobias Lindholm, who he co-wrote the script with for Another Round. So, you know, you've got the basis of the four main characters. And trust me, I've spent a lot of time around teachers. The idea of them trying to keep their blood alcohol level at a certain point, I get it. But I thought this film was really, really good in the balancing, and far more accessible than I found Withnail and I to be, in that there were moments of levity, there were moments of humor, there were moments of enjoyment where the friends were being friends, right? The group was being a group. And there were also really sad moments. There were also really moments that were filled with a lot of pathos. I found this to be enjoyable is probably the wrong word, but I found this to be far more accessible than Withnail and I, and I had a better time with it. What do you make of Another Round?
Well, it's interesting, more than a little ironic when you say it's more accessible than Withnail and I, because I mean Thomas Vinterberg didn't start his career making particularly accessible movies. I mean, Festen is a great film, but it's a tough watch. I mean, in terms of the way it observes social dynamics and things.
This is the thing, though. We're going back to, like, I watched that when I was studying the Dogme movement, so like I was kind of in that mindset of watching that kind of movie.
Well, the thing is, with those Dogme movies, they were, by design, they were very raw, and they felt very spontaneous. And I think Another Round is clearly the product of a filmmaker who is older and more polished, because I think it is definitely but deliberately a more polished movie in terms of the way it looks, in terms of the way the plot coheres in and of itself. And I think I don't want to say it's a soft movie, but it's softer than a lot of Vince Berg. It's more sympathetic. It's a more sympathetic Vince Berg movie than I think a lot of the director's previous works. There is ample generosity for all of its characters, with all their flaws. And I think maybe one of the things that Withnail and I does is Withnail and I takes great relish in plunging head on into its characters' fallibilities without ever really suggesting they're ever going to improve. This movie, Another Round, does. I think it ultimately does point towards the possibility of a redemption.
Yes.
Come the end of it.
Well.
Well.
Let's get into the ending. In that case, it's a perfect time. So the ending being after Tommy, the friend who succumbs to alcoholism, drowns, and the remaining three friends, Peter, Nikolaj, and Mads Mikkelsen's Martin, go out to honor his memory. They see the graduating student of their school going past on a bus, and they are having a load of fun. They are celebrating.
It's their like passing out ceremony, I think. It's an end of term thing, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
or something like
some
that.
sort of like drunken revelry.
Yeah, the movie makes a point about student drunken rituals against middle-aged concerns. Actually, I think the film actually mines quite a lot of power from that. Actually, I think.
Well, the drinking rates in Denmark are some of the highest in the world. So it's I guess coming from a place of experience, but the ending of the film when the buses are going past, the teachers leave the restaurant where they're at and join the students for a drink. One of the things that has been mentioned earlier on in the film is that Martin used to dance. So Mads Mikkelsen actually performs jazz ballet to
which works because Mads Mikkelsen used to be a dancer and he used to be a gymnast. So, and apparently he didn't want to do this scene. He didn't want to do it, and he had to be talked into it. And it ends up being, it caps off what is ultimately a very liberating sequence when he dives into the harbour. And little biographical note: I went to Copenhagen a few years ago where I met up with our very own Bo, a friend of the show, Bo, and we sat in the spot where they filmed this, and we had our photo taken. So by the harbour in Copenhagen.
Can we just, if we're giving Bo a shout out,
suck it, Bo?
Yeah. I mean, that's what all the locals were saying when we were in Copenhagen.
Quite. So the reason I sort of say when it comes to this being a more uplifting ending is that I actually don't think it is. I actually think it's sad. It's really sad.
What, the act of him diving off the end? But
no. The act of them joining in, the act of them.
I see. Right, yeah.
The act of them foregoing what they've learned in their experiment, and whilst they had their initial highs, they experienced the lowest of all lows, and the choice thereafter that they make is to continue on this.
That's an intro. I hadn't looked at it like that, and I think that is a valid way of looking at it. I don't look at it like that because they come to the sequence having already experienced the low. The low has already been done, and I think what this shows at the end is the ending shows they can be indulgent without careering into chaos necessarily. And I think that it's part of a collective spirit, uplifting spirit. That's the way I took it.
Well, the fact that he ignores the message from his wife, so he has a shot at redemption. This is then his redemption, where he can repair his marriage, his relationships.
We're talking about Mads Mikkelsen's character here, by the way, Martin.
Yes, Martin. Yeah. And he chooses not to do that. He chooses to down a bottle of what looks to be Prosecco or champagne.
Champagne, yeah.
And of course it's champagne. Why wouldn't it be? And it looks to me like the choice is there of him basically turning around and not doing this or indulging in this. And the fact that he not only indulges in this, but drops the one sort of the one no-go area that he had earlier on in the film, which was, I'm not getting up and dancing. He drops that inhibition because, hey, why not? We've had a few. but that's desperately sad. The fact that
Okay.
he abandons the chance of redemption with his wife. He abandons the inhibition of, no, I don't want to do that. I can see that there's an element of celebration to it, but it just feels a lot like taking the easy way out.
Okay. I didn't see it like that. I saw it as a wholeheartedly celebratory sequence. The fact that he dances at all, which, as you said, is something that's kind of built up to throughout the movie. I mean, I personally, I was willing to entertain the idea that after the film finished, that he probably would have got back together with his wife, because Martin is Mads Mikkelsen's character is basically deeply repressed and deeply sad. And I think, no pun intended, he's uncorked at the end, but it goes in stages, isn't it? It's like you said, it's 0.5, then it's 0.8, then it escalates. But I think that come the end of it, I like to think that he's not dependent on alcohol, but he's kind of more aware of his relationship with it and what it can do and what it has done, the pernicious effects, what it has done, causing, the arguments with his wife. I like to think that he has come to that sense of self-awareness. But the fact that we can't agree as to whether the ending is wholly celebratory or wholly sad is probably a testament to how good Thomas Vinterberg is as a director, because he obfuscates our emotions like that, as he has done in all of his films.
Yes.
So, which is a good sign, I think.
No, I agree. And I think the choice to end the final shot as a freeze frame with Martin in midair.
Yeah, diving off the harbour, yeah.
Yeah, has him literally suspended in two realities. Whether he's going back to the sober reclamation of his life and his marriage, following the exact same path that Tommy did, which is ending in the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
I think that that's deliberate. I think that Vinterberg has deliberately put that there.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting story about dependencies. It's like how do we operate at optimal efficiency as a species? Can we only do it if we've boosted our blood alcohol level to a certain amount? If we pitch it at exactly that right level, are we lifted above moroseness but just below chaotic, potentially violent drunkenness? And what does that say about us as a species and about our dependency on substances?
I mean, this would go very well with Limitless, wouldn't it? The Robert De Niro,
the Bradley Cooper
movie.
Yeah, it would actually. Yeah, that was an interest. Why didn't we do that on? Yeah,
you wanted to do Withnail.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, but yeah, the idea that human beings need stimulants. Human beings have always needed stimulants as effectively an escape from the humdrum banalities of their own lives. I mean, I think the most affecting sequence comes pretty near the beginning, before they've even started the experiment, when they're all sat around the table and Martin's not drinking. They're all having a drink, but he's not. And he basically just collapses, basically saying that, what has my life come to? My marriage is at a stalemate. My students don't respect me. And Mads Mikkelsen he's a fantastic actor. I mean, he's so good,
he's brilliant in this. He's so good in this.
He's such a hangdog, like morose. He's so beaten down. You can feel how beaten down he, at least until he starts drinking until he starts doing the alcohol experiment. Yeah,
he manages to play the downtrodden nature, but also to bring the charm. You can see that there is a former intellectual. You can see that there is a former great teacher in there. He balances that brilliantly, and I think the work he did with Vinterberg in The Hunt is also. I think that they clearly bring the best out of each other, because Mikkelsen in that movie, I think he won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah,
the fact that he wasn't nominated in this Oscar-winning movie. I think that Vinterberg was the only director nominated that year that didn't have an acting nomination from that same film. So I think that's probably some sort of oversight, but hey, Oscar's going to Oscar.
Yeah, and I've got angry enough about that, and I don't particularly want to get angry about that again until the next Oscars season. So yeah, let's just say that Mads Mikkelsen does all of his best work when he's working in and around Denmark. So that absolutely, he has
not
done
crying
some decent...
blood.
yeah, I mean, he was one of the best Bond villains, the Chief in Casino Royale. He has
The
done some
Chief,
good
yeah.
Hollywood. Yeah, he was in Rogue One, but his best work is in Denmark, which is where he's from. And you think of things like A Royal Affair as well. He was tremendous in that. Did a lot of work with Nick Winding Refn. Yeah, he's really, really good in this, and it's a very subtle performance, like an onion being stripped back, bit by bit, and the interactions with the students, I think, are among the most rewarding because you can see the way the students are, without knowing what he's doing with this alcohol uptake, they are picking up on his positive vibes.
They're
like, more and more.
responding to his to the way he's holding himself.
Yeah,
I mean, he's fantastic in this movie. I think without his central performance, obviously we need to credit the other three members of the group that undertake this experiment. You got Thomas Bo Larsen as Tommy, the one who succumbs to alcoholism. Magnus Millang as Nicolaj, the one who wets the bed. And you've got Lars Ranth as Peter, who weirdly convinces a student to drink before taking an oral exam. So
yeah,
that's a very strange thing. But it's paying forward the results of the experiment, I guess. Interestingly, I was reading up on Thomas Bo Larsen. He suffered with substance abuse and alcohol abuse from the age of 13, and he joined Alcoholics Anonymous and remains actively involved with AA. So the fact that he is the one member of the group that is struggling the most with giving this up, I think there is that element of realness to his performance.
Well, that probably almost goes back to the dogma principle, doesn't it? In as much as, what are we watching here? Are we watching fiction or are we watching induced documentary? And kind of blurring those lines in a way, I suppose.
I don't think he really drowned on a boat with a dog, but
it'd be one hell of an achievement for him to be in this film if he did.
It'd be pushing it slightly too far, even for Winterberg. Yeah. That's Lars von Trier territory.
Actually, we haven't done a von Trier film on here, have we yet? I don't think we have.
Probably for good reason.
Yeah, we can do Melancholia. That's one of the more accessible ones. Let's do that at some point.
I was going to say Breaking the Waves, but okay.
Yeah, could do Breaking the Waves. Yeah, as long as it's not Antichrist. Yeah.
This is now a behind the scenes chat rather than an analysis.
And we haven't had a drink.
Well,
you have. I haven't. Yeah,
I'm at 0.05. I'm okay.
Yeah, you're all right. Yes, I need to come up to your level, but I don't have any booze with me, so you're stuck with me. Yeah, so, as I am. But
yeah. I guess I'll take it. I thought that Another Round was really, really good. I really, really enjoyed watching it and digging into it and sort of mulling over it in prep for what I wanted to say about it here. It is, like I said, a look at a midlife crisis. It's a look at someone who had potential that didn't necessarily squander it, just chose other things in life. He didn't pursue his master's or his doctorate because he had young children at the time. Like it's mentioned in the film. So he's got this sadness to him, and you do see Mads Mikkelsen breaking free of that, and you do see him breaking those shackles, and whether he chooses to remain free of those or not, that's clearly up to you at the end. But I really enjoyed Another Round.
Well, a couple of observations. I just want to quickly go back to the contrast of young and old. I think that's very, very important. That's clearly one of the central tenets of the movie. I mean, the movie starts with a student hazing ritual where these youngsters are basically running around a lake chugging beer. This is before we get introduced to our central quartet. And I think what it does is the movie does a very good job of offsetting youthful optimism against a kind of becalmed midlife crisis. I think the film does that very eloquently. It doesn't overdo it, but I think it observes that with a degree of intelligence.
The scenes in the classrooms versus the scenes in the staff room.
Yeah,
they're so much more dry as the film goes on, as the classrooms pick up. Even as the classrooms are picking up, the rest of the school just feels dull.
Yeah, yeah, and it feels particularly dull at the beginning, and then as the alcohol intake goes up bit by bit, the school starts to feel more lively, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. 'Cause it's kind of like, why do we need alcohol to kind of bring the vibes up like this? So it's kind
I think that's the whole point of the film. Is I think it's a warning of the effect of alcohol and the effect of alcoholism. I think that's why you have Tommy as a character. That's why you have the question at the end. I think that it is an indictment of alcohol whilst also remaining a celebration of it. You know, it celebrates it to a point, and it goes back to what I was saying at the top of the episode, that both of them both films this week look at the impacts of the substances that are mentioned within them, not just from a celebratory perspective, but also from these are the consequences of.
Yeah, I don't think we quite addressed the circumstances that led to the film being as it is. So it was based on a play that written by Vince Berg. He also took inspiration from his own daughter, who was younger and plugged into Danish drinking culture. She tragically died after an initial pass of the script had been written, and the script was then rewritten to be more uplifting, basically in honor of her memory. The script was actually rewritten to be more life affirming. Apparently it was darker before that, and I'll quote Thomas Vinceberg here: it should not just be about drinking, it was about being awakened to life. So, and I ultimately think that's what the end, I mean, I know we don't necessarily agree on that. I think that is what the end sequence is about. I think that is what the whole movie is about. I'm not just piggybacking off what the director has said there. I think I've made it clear before I quoted that. That's what I think the film is about. I think personally think that quote backs it up. But, you know, just...
Yeah, I mean, just because you make a film, it doesn't mean you understand it.
Trust the tale, not the teller, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and, you know, so one of Martin's children was supposed to be a daughter. He was supposed to have a son and a daughter, but he ended up having two sons in the film because Thomas Vinterberg's daughter Ida was supposed to play one of the roles, which is, you know, I mean, obviously it had a profound effect on Vinterberg as that would, but the film is dedicated to her memory. So, you know, it has its elements of pathos around it as well as it does in the film. I think that it is there's points in it which are particularly uplifting, but there's also points in it that are deliberately upsetting and dour. So
but that's life, isn't it? That's life ultimately. So
yeah. I did have an interesting thing that I came across was that Mads Mikkelsen actually picked up the person who wrote the song, Emil Goll, who is the lead singer of the band Scarlet Pleasure, which their song "What a Life" is the film. It is in the final scene of the film. Mads Mikkelsen picked up his teenage daughter from a party with this young guy twice, who was totally drunk, and he drove him home, and they ended up, you know, working together in this, a very surreal.
So he picked up the singer, like the singer who actually ended up doing the
yeah.
Yeah.
Mikkelsen actually said that it's a quote crazy circle.
Yeah, it really is. Circle of life.
So,
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So, speaking of circles that end up closing themselves, it's about time we wrap up. So, the budget on Another Round was around 4.5 million euro, which translates as 33.5 million kroner, Danish kroner, and it took $21.7 million at the box office. So that was a hit. That, you know, that's a big hit. It was a crossover hit. It was an Oscar-winning film. Yes, it was Best International Oscar, but Vinterberg was nominated in the director category, as we mentioned. So, yeah, I think that considers it a crossover.
I was really glad when it got the Oscar. I mean, I must admit, I know it was released in that weird COVID period where Oscars were reduced to being even more irrelevant than they usually are. But this was one of the choices I was very happy with. It deserved it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen any of the other nominees from that year. So you had Better Days from Hong Kong, Collective from Romania, The Man Who Sold His Skin from Tunisia, and Quo Vadis Ida from Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if I saw any of those, to be fair. I suppose I can't remember.
This is the one that stands out to me.
Yeah, I can't remember if... Well, obviously, this wasn't the same year as Minari, but Minari was partly in English, so I can't remember if Minari was classed as a foreign language film or not.
It was not classed as a foreign language film.
Okay,
it was the same year.
Yeah.
Because that was the year that Stephen Young was nominated.
That's right,
Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah.
And that will just about wrap us up for this week's episode of Frame to Frame. You can find us in all the usual places across social media, as pretty much everywhere is at Frame to Frame Pod. Next week, we're going to be looking at unorthodox relationships. You'll be able to find out what those movies are next week. And until next week, where we're talking about unorthodox relationships, I'm Andy Williams.
And I'm Sean Wilson.
And thanks very much for listening. Please don't take these films as actual advice. Do not drink lighter fluid. Bye-bye.